Thank you for joining us, everyone, for another episode of Creators Chat, episode 41, After Show Convo, featuring Brittany Allyson. Who knows what we're going to talk about next? Our show shall begin now. Streaming from Retro Earth Studio and brought to you by wearehistorically.com, Conscious Human Apparel, and
Learn to play jazz piano like a pro, by a pro, with Jazz Piano Pro Essentials at jazzpianopro.com.
Hello and welcome to the After Show Convo. I'm Rusty.
I'm Peter.
And we're picking up with our guest, Brittany Allyson.
When do you officially break up? That's a really good question. You know, is the day you stop living together, if you're living together, or the day you stop interacting, or is it the day that the love has left the building? You know what I mean? And we are now just beings around each other. And in that particular dynamic, leaving my house to go on these walks was a saving grace for me. And I really want to just pass that on. If anyone ever watches this and they're in a toxic dynamic, spend time by yourself, fill yourself back up, invite your partner to join you and see what happens. If they turn you down, or if that activity cannot be completed without lowering your frequency, now you know that you can have a high frequency alone, and that person is disrupting your frequency. I don't know how else to describe how enlightening that was for that dynamic. It's just showing empathy and saying, you know what, where you are in your healing journey is not matching where I am, right? We are not mirrors, and we're not the mirrors we thought we were when we were, first attracted to one another. And that's okay. And but it's easier said than done, truly.
Well, it just comes back to that lesson of, everything is grace, and not all lessons come with sweet, tasty treats. And that's one of the things I find that is it's a journey of the heart, where it comes back to us, where we have to really be willing to let go. We have to really come to hold the values within our heart as high as we really want them to, for them to be experienced. Because when we don't, it's that self-sacrifice, like that, I guess you would say, that self-sacrificial concept, where we're giving away a part of us when we tolerate those things. And I think it is, like, I'm right there with you in terms of the hope for the world and how people are developing, is because they're starting to reawaken into their power again. And I find that's kind of what the 2020 and thus far in 2021 has really kind of put people on that road, where it's like, are you about self-empowerment, self-development, your own self-healing, or are you not? And those that aren't, and those that are starting to, you either drop away, or you can just tell that it's just such a combative environment and energy, because it's almost like water and oil separating. It's like there's that period going on right now in society where, we're seeing it. And I don't know, I'm hopeful that, the light and love will always win, how I see it. So
it's my belief system that it does, right? That's something, it becomes your knowing, right? That is, and I'm not even going to entertain that it's not, because that lowers my frequency. What is the point in that? What is the point in me thinking that this is all a waste, that self-development is a waste of my time? That is part of the crazy making of someone who is operating at a lower frequency. They have a lot of the work. See, that's the thing, is I think some beautiful, beautiful beings end up in these really crazy dynamics because you are a bright, beautiful light, and you have done so much work, and you haven't even acknowledged it in yourself. I went years not really taking ownership of how much work I've poured into myself. Oh my gosh, it make me emotional.
Let it out. Let it out.
Thank you. I went so long not really allowing myself to know how hard it's been, because that's not being productive. That's not moving past it. But the trauma and the things that I've gone through, they're not the same as someone else. Of course, that doesn't excuse what you have gone through. It doesn't excuse what is true for you, and how it's to evolve. It's allowed you to evolve. It's allowed you to choose again and again love, and of yourself, and then of others, because it pours out of you. You know, I was telling my friend the other day who I was texting, he was saying, you know, you're always so happy, and I'm thank you for your advice. I've been having some really low days. And I was like, I'm not always happy. I am not. I wake up and I'm fighting anxiety or some kind of depressive thought or negative frequency, and I have to actively choose it every day. Every day. Even today, I had to do that. I have to journal. I have to go walk. I have to move my body. I have to drink some water. I have to be silent. I have to breathe deeply. I have to read something that inspires me, or talk to someone that inspires me. And sometimes the goal that day is just to get myself up. That is the goal every day, honestly, is just to get myself back to the healthy. And that's okay. And in fact, like submitting to the release of, this is how it's going to be for the rest of my life. The rest of my life, I may have to I have to choose that high frequency, and I'm making that work shorter and shorter, so that every day it's faster. It's faster.
Because that muscle memory for the body and the energetic body becomes that new path of least resistance for life to express itself.
Yeah, totally. But it's like exercising, right? Like if you stop exercising, you might start to not see those results that you had when you were active, right? So it's and the brain is a muscle. So
well,
you know,
it's really beautiful that you do highlight that point of, you have to give yourself that space to even accept and kind of process everything that's gone through, and give yourself that praise. It's one of the most important things that I find people miss, because they're so worried about others, you know, judgments or projections, or even like our own kind of internal taking things and running a mile with it. But it's such an important process, and I guess you would say practice of this healing journey, to give yourself the kudos and praise that you do deserve, because I find that it's so underappreciated, because there's no certificate or medal or ceremony that you get when you come to this point of self-knowledge and like, oh, this is what oneness is. Oh, this is pretty interesting, you know. And just because of the way our journey, or you know, our world is right now, and the journey of it, that it's so materialistic, you know, to be able to go through all this really intense work that requires courage, that requires trust, that requires, you know, you to be your own judge, jury, and executioner, you know, to sever those threads of attachment, to really consciously recognize things, and be willing and loving enough to let go of things that, you know, don't vibe with you anymore. Like, it's the most challenging journey. I think that's one of the reasons why I say, if, you know, if this was easy, everyone would be blissed out all the time and just like, oh, in love and happiness and harmony. But it really does take that X factor for the human spirit to really come back home. And that's why I always like to say it is, you know, it's like, I always congratulate my guests where it's like, yes, I'm so happy you made it. Because there's so many of us, you know, that don't get this opportunity every day to experience this beautiful gift of life. And just to hear your journey thus far, and like how you've gone, you know, like the practices you do, like, I just hope that's a lot more encouragement for those that feel like they're lost and that they can't do it, you know, that everyone starts in their own place. And as I say, there's great suffering and wealth, and there's great wealth and suffering, you know, like, and when you actually keep that heart of gold that you have through it all, like, yeah, that's a badass angel right there.
Oh, I appreciate your words so much, and acknowledgement. I think it's more than just celebrate what you've accomplished, but really just acknowledging it. Like that, if celebrating's too much, if celebrating feels too pompous or something, just allow yourself to be like, okay, write it all out. Look how much you've accomplished. Look how much you've overcome, and take inventory. That's enough to just hold yourself and say you're doing a good job. I think that's something that leaves us when we were children, honestly, is hearing those kind, positive, loving messages that maybe come from a parent or an older sibling, or maybe a teacher. Just you're doing a good job, and that's it. That's all you have to hear.
Yeah.
And we have to start giving a message to ourselves. Just like give it to yourself. I'm doing a good job at life. I'm doing it. I tell myself that all the time when I'm in tears or I'm freaking out. I'm like, you're doing a good job. You're alive. You're alive. You're doing a good job. Like,
yeah. And that right there is, during the quarantine, I've lost a few friends, and I think it's always kind of crazy just to think that at points in people's lives, they really do feel alone. And the way we treat individuals in this world is less as really celebrating their individuality and more so trying to celebrate what makes other people feel good, and when we lose sense of ourselves. And I know it's like from my experience as a young mixed male, I stopped getting those types of loving affirmations the moment I started going through puberty. It's like once the little boy was done and it became like started growing into a young man, like all those things stopped. And I think that's one of those things about, culture that we really do need to change, is that it's not just, I see, the beingness that we are is you have to balance out your feminine and masculine energies, because it takes sometimes that little bit of fire, and sometimes you got to tone it down and put the water on it, and it's that balancing act of really coming to know your full expression of this human being and this human experience. And because we have so much projection, and I guess you would say expectations onto others of social standards and things, that we really just get lost in this egoic delusion of you need to be fitting XYZ, you should be this and that. And we lose track of how special each of us really are, and it's just the little things, like you were just saying, like just acknowledging it's like, yeah, you overcame that. That's super awesome. That's all it takes, is just a little word. And how many people just overlook these little things all the time and try to always like one up someone's trauma, and just like all these wild egotistical expressions. It's crazy.
The one-upping each other's trauma, that is something that I totally resonate with what you're saying. Like, I have always, you don't know what someone's gone through. You just don't know from what they look like or where they come from. You can't make that assumption, number one. And number two, once you hear their trauma, to try and one up it, I mean, that is just completely, you're not acknowledging them, you're not hearing them, you're not meeting them where they are. You're telling them that their feelings are invalid because it could have been worse, right? And they are telling themselves that. Everyone's telling themselves that. Everyone I've ever met, all of the beautiful hearts in this world that I am so lucky to just know, when they've opened up to me, they're always, a lot of them are just like, yeah, but it's worse for other people. That's the empath in you. That's the beautiful being in you that sees that others are suffering. But to acknowledge it in yourself, and to acknowledge the strength that you had to overcome your suffering one step at a time, that is, I think it's crucial for your development, because you start to be aware, and you start to not maybe repeat those things that you've already accomplished, right? You start to create boundaries that protect you from repeating that history of having to suffer that again. And that's where it's an important tool. It's more a tool than it is an egoic, boost for yourself. It that when you're in a really low moment and you need to fill yourself up, sure, okay. The ego is not a bad thing either. It's kind of like, oh, there's a whole conversation in itself, you know? So.
Oh, I love it. And it's so important for people to recognize that. Like, I got into this huge disagreement with a friend of mine because he wanted to talk about, things like ego, or rather, I was expressing my experience of some of the things that I was going through spiritually at the time. And he was trying to be like, oh, that's an ego death, bro. That's an ego that, just essentially try to tell me what I was experiencing. And I was just like, no, I mean, it was more of like a recognition of like, and that's why I like to say healing the wounds of the heart, is because I've come to understand that like our ego is, it's our first friend in truth. It's the body, it's that imagination. It's that it's our team in this creative experiment. And when we just do ego death and cut off away parts of ourselves, it's like, no, like our ego is always trying to, it's like the antagonist in a film. Like you can't have a great hero without a great villain. And it's like, it's always trying to do its own mix of ways of expressing itself, of where it's pained, for us to be like, oh, I need to look into that. And then when we actually dive deep into the waters, we're like, oh, there's the plug. And then we take it out and then it drains. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, like that was refreshing. Oh, I'm so sorry I was ignoring you this whole time. And that's why, like, you said it earlier, and it shined right through, because that's what I say to my students and clients is, you're healing and consoling your younger self, that inner child, the one that was hurt, and they weren't ready to handle it then. So it just manifested in its own ways, but you're where you're at now. So let's come back. Let's give it a hug, let's pat it on the back. It's okay. Give it the love that you needed back then. And I feel like that's one of the biggest kind of misconceptions of spirituality, is there's so many concepts that get thrown into it that it just loses the weight of the real important work of how it relates to you. So it's like ego death. Yeah, you can call it a death, but like what wasn't really there doesn't really die. But, like, so for me, it's just a process of healing and unfoldment and mastery and love,
Definitely. And where I'm living now, I know I mentioned I'm living in a trailer, but I bought a trailer and I'm doing the trailer life now, which is really cool. Been many years of wanting to manifest this, so that's kind of nuts. But if on your journey, the opportunity to learn this lesson hasn't presented itself through someone's kind words or advice, or maybe you haven't gone down the YouTube rabbit hole, or maybe you just haven't met that mentor yet, well, then your exposure to that lesson hasn't happened yet. So your ego flaring up and being defensive is part of the education of life. You feel the restriction on something that you desire, and you become curious about, what is this thing that's holding me back from experiencing what I just was experiencing, which was bliss. It's part of it helps teach us about where we are and how we want to be here. And to want to get rid of it is to want to die, because it's essential. It's the human experience, not just the spiritual experience.
Yes. Yeah. I like to think of it kind of like, the consciousness, that like that soul that goes beyond the form is the rider of the horse, and the ego is the horse itself. It's a journey, and I think that's the one biggest misconception, is that, when you really come to heal and go through this recognition of letting go of the pains and learning the lessons, you come back to that playful nature, like when you're a kid again. And then you're just like, oh, that was you. Oh my gosh, I overlooked this, and that's always the biggest kind of paradox with spirituality, is people always think it's a continuation of this external search, where it's like, no, it's like fully focused on adhering what you already have, and really tapping into the unique, beautiful spirit you are, embodied in this personality of form, like each of us has our own talents and skills. So it's like, shine your light, come on. And I think, like, right there with the childhood observations, I don't think there's anything been more powerful and thought-provoking, and really is kind of opening up numerous doorways of introspection than getting a chance to work with kids. So it's like I have 10 years of experience, doing childcare, from teaching science classes after school from ages like 4 to 16. And my favorite group is always just the little kids, like the kindergartner, first graders, second graders, because they're still like kids. Third grade, they try to look, oh, I'm almost fourth grade, So they're getting into their personhood, a little bit more. But when you see the same tendencies, it was just this mind blast of, I saw these two kids having an argument. I was just like, brought them in, was talking to them about it. And the way that they were kind of like bickering at each other, you could tell it was like, you probably soaked that up from your environment, but it was like the exact same way like my parents interacted. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is how early these conditioning set. This is how early we start to soak these things up. And then when we age, we start to just manifest in its own infinite expressions that it can go down. But it starts so young that we just lose touch with what we are. And it would be so cool just to see education change on that standpoint of just like self-curiousness or self-curiosity, self-inquiry, self-mastery, just learning how to navigate the inner environment just as much as we focus navigating the external.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Magical.
It would be magical. The closest thing I've heard, and I haven't, I don't know a ton about this, but my collaborator, Nathan Brockett, he was brought up in a Waldorf school. You know about Waldorf schooling?
Yeah, like nature, getting yourself back out there. Like, I know a little bit, just because we have them around here.
Sure, yeah. No, I mean, from everything that I've talked to, it's based off of anthroposophy, if I'm saying that correctly. But it's taking the development of a child and taking that into consideration with the education and allowing them to sort of pace themselves, like what you're talking about, self-mastery, but meeting the child with where they are developmentally. And I think in our public schooling, which is what I was raised in, is everything's, even now more and more, it's getting so standardized. It's just an information wave and you can't retain it. It's to get you through that test and to get you through that, and you're not there's nothing Socratic about our education. It's just a disservice to people because you're just being trained to be a cog in the machine and to be a really good cog in the machine. I want to be a really good one, essentially, because I mean,
it's so true though. It's an indoctrination center to like that broken ideology where you disconnect the heart. It's like
like I can disconnect my heart really, really well. Hire me. Fake smile, customer service. Honestly, right? Like it's heartbreaking. Ooh. And I've worked in customer service and I've also worked in some top sales sort of work, development work, administrative work. And that's again another detour of the soul being like, this is not in alignment with what purpose I personally resonate with what I'm here to do. Right. It's it sucks that we have to pay to be here. That's a whole conversation as well. But and I feel like the constant conversation I'm having with artists is, what are you doing for work right now? So that like everyone's trying to find the work-life balance, like what's the perfect one? And again, it's catered to the individual as well. I will honestly, that's what I think.
That's so interesting. No, I like that. Well, for me, the way I see it is we just have so many of our eggs in the wrong basket. And instead of really focusing on the one being or source of focus that really matters, which is ourselves and our own inner space, we have everything, and I guess it's a part of the journey. I know this, but it's like we have to just focus on everything outside of us and use that to fill this gap in our heart. Use that to fill this kind of egoic desire and delusion. And life has a fun way of, having us put our money where our mouth is in that sense. If you're serious about this whole inner healing and love and inner looking type of play, but it just never ceases to amaze me how rewarding it is, yet it's the most, I mean, we come back to that woo-woo term, you know, it's the most mocked, it's the most underappreciated, it's the most skeptical, you know, it has the most persecution to really go through this inner woo-woo spiritual path. And it's the one thing that actually brings us back home, like back to our true self. And it's, I don't know, it's just always hard for me to really look at this world sometimes. And because I'm a big believer in the knower, well, I should say I'm a big knower in the fact that like we're all going to figure it out eventually. But it's just like, oh man, but when? You know, sometimes, I mean, it's just like full transparency for the listeners, you know, like we all have our days, like you were saying earlier, Brittany, like to wake up and not get caught up in the overall energy of things. Are just like, there's a lot of despair out there. There's a lot of people that still don't care about one another, and they don't live each day recognizing, you know, the namaste, the divine journey, and being within each person you meet, to not get caught up in it. But again, that's like, you have to keep practicing those love building exercises of like gratitude, positive affirmations, just getting out in the world and experiencing life, because then it'll throw you those Hail Marys every now and then, be like, oh, I didn't know this person existed until now, and they just made my day. Like, but yeah, so I'm curious though, in terms of this, because we'll bring it full circle with the kind of bohemian lifestyle of the child Brittany back into this tiny home living now. Like, how is tiny home living, especially compared to like New York tiny living?
Well, I have more space than that. I'm in a 19-foot trailer, so
love it.
Not a ton more space, but I have more space than my New York apartment. Well, I will say that living this way is something that I have been desiring for so long. So a lot of my personal choices along the way, even before I was living this in a tiny space, were already kind of leading me toward this. So minimalism, understanding that everything is temporary. That's something that came to me along my traveling journey, because when you're couch hopping, right, you want to carry as little as possible with you, just to make it easier. And like I arrived to Seattle with 2 duffel bags and a suitcase, and like sometimes I feel overwhelmed if I have too many things, like things I wouldn't be able to not necessarily always carry on me, but just to feel like I mentally know the capsule of my belongings, you know, so I don't lose things. I don't have like too many junk drawers or stuff like that, because it's just been my journey that it's taking up space that it's unnecessary. I could use that. I could utilize that space better. That's not to say I don't have a junk drawer. I do.
Yeah, it's like we all got one.
But we do. And you know, so I was already, you know, developing habits and things that drew me to this lifestyle, and I wanted the feeling of freedom of something that comes with owning something, and feeling like I could, you know, if when COVID lifts, or not COVID lifts, but well, yes, hopefully when COVID goes away, but when quarantine lifts, the ability to be nomadic and maybe do something or something like that, and be funded, you know, essentially by having a home. That's part of it, you know, but it's been great in the sense of feeling like I have a nest to invest in, and it comes down. And also, I'm not in a toxic environment. It's just me, myself, and I, and that's been such a blessing. Never been able to afford that before, so that's a big part of it too. That's really comforting. You know, and there are cons to this lifestyle, of course there are, but there's cons to living in any situation, and you just kind of have to try it out and see what you want to do. If it's something that people are interested in doing, it's definitely been a journey. It's it's brought me to this home that I'm renting from, filled with children and dog neighbors that I did not know before, and they're all, I again think this is an extension of the manifestation. Is I took a leap, and this net that appeared is beyond my understanding of love and care and kindness. And I couldn't do this alone. I literally didn't do it alone. I had a friend lend me a truck to help me get this trailer, to find one, to bring it here. So many blessings that I expected to have to just figure out on my own with YouTube or Google or whatever. And so it starts with the inner work, right? The inner work is a reflection of my outer world. I really believe that. And this is a tiny world, but it's a peaceful, beautiful world nonetheless. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I love that. I love that. Well, especially because for your future tours, traveling, that's going to come in super handy.
Yeah. Woo! Let's manifest that.
Facts. When you were saying, I was like, no, you're gonna go on a tour. You're gonna really flourish in that nomadic lifestyle. And I think that's the coolest thing about the coming age is people are really valuing freedom again. And that's where I find that we have a lot of hope for the world in the future. Is that whenever we feel oppressed, it's important to question, well, where are the chains? And when we see these different things where it's like, oh, we can just get up and go. Like nothing's holding us back from that. You end that self-persecution. And I guess to quote yourself, I guess you leave space for the face you're in.
I do have a couple of comments I'd like to make because you made some very profound statements. And well, one was actually a question. You said, how do we end a relationship? And, or when do you end a relationship? And so I actually had to do some thinking about that because I think relationship is one of the trickiest life lessons to learn because we think it's about the other person. We're always just in relationship with ourselves and our world and how that person fits in our world or how we fit in with their world. And so there's always this conflict of interest of, we're trying to create a world together, yet it's nearly impossible because you are going to be true to your world. I'm going to be true to my world. And so the trap I fell into in past relationships was trying to keep the person the way they were, or they're trying to keep me the way I was, or you're not the same person I met. Well, hopefully not.
Right.
Yeah.
But growing in a relationship together, I like to kind of put it into a very simple visual. It's like walking into a room together. It's like walking into a house. There's a doorway, and we can't fit through the doorway side by side. We have to walk into that doorway one at a time. And so ladies first, my wife goes first. And so she's now in a completely different room and I'm in a completely different room. And so that's kind of like how our relationships evolved, is that this person becomes that person, and then I have to adapt to that person and I become another person. And so then I have to step through the doorway, so she makes her, so we change one at a time, maybe simultaneously, maybe sequentially, her change inspires my change. But typically they walk into that door. Well, I want you in this room, but I'm in this room. Maybe it's a one-way entry. No, you can only step through. You can't step back, and so it gets to a point where you have to have enough faith in myself that when I step through that room, I'm going to like who I'm going to be in that room. And that's what we don't know, is that there's uncertainty, is I don't know what's on the other side of that doorway. And if she steps through that doorway, am I still going to be in love with that same person if I step, because now there's a whole getting to know each other all over again. Yeah. Situations change, circumstances change. We're constantly evolving. Relationships do not remain the same because everything's constantly changing. World is changing. I'm changing. We're growing. Our perceptions are changing. Our experiences change, right? And so the heart knows what the heart wants.
mix.
And well, I mean, it's clear. The heart seeks fulfillment. Now, the brain thinks it knows what it wants. It seeks security. And our body always gets what it wants, and it wants comfort. And so but here's the kicker. I don't know what I want. What do I want? And what do I seek? Because the heart's going in one direction, sometimes the brain's going in another, and the body is like, I don't care as long as I'm comforted. And then you throw another person into the mix, and another person, and say we have a family, and you got a nuclear, right? You're living with a family right now, and so your world has now become extended. Your relationship with yourself, your relationship with your environment with the world, and so that's constantly changing. And if you always remain the same, it'll only be one experience, and the lessons would never evolve. And so you have to seek new experiences and evolve, otherwise it becomes stale and stagnant. And that's how relationships become toxic, is no one wants to change because they're afraid of the change. Or if you change, what if I don't change? Or what if you change, I don't like who you change into? And so there becomes all this, don't change, stay just the way you are, and then the pressure of not changing becomes resistance to change, and then that creates more friction. Resistance equals friction, and so one person's changing, another one's not, and then the tension, eventually something snaps.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it's a dance. It's definitely a dance, and I like that concept of when things go on changing, it becomes stagnant then toxic, and that's the stuff that I've always found is always interesting. Is like personal experience from those I've seen, it's always just a question of how much abuse are you willing to take? Like if you come from like especially as like a kid, like I found that it's like if you experience kind of like a lot of trauma in your childhood, you can take quite a lot of stuff that you don't care for. And that's, I find, the sickiest part of that situation, is coming to that point of conflicting the mind and being like, no, that's not what I want anymore.
Well,
I'm going to make
as a child, often we don't have choices.
Yeah, I think that's where it comes from, though, where it's like we justify things. And
well, I was going to make one last point about, and I think you just stressed it, about you're talking about how we need to inject fun into our life. Like we go out seeking fun. That really is what I'm seeking. Now, how that shows up in my life changes from day to day. But I also have to add that, the one who makes it fun is me. Like I can go to an amusement center and have no fun. Amusement is not guaranteed at an amusement center.
So true.
And so the thing is, we are our own experiences. And so that also ties it back into the relationship. Like if I like Creatives Chat is a lot of fun for me because I bring the fun, Peter brings the fun, I enjoy the fun. There could be people who are watching this go, no, it's not fun at all. Well, that's on you, because
exactly, that's on you.
That's on you. And that's your relationship with you, right? And so my relationship with me is that I create a game and I play with myself, and this is my playground. And then I invite people to come and play with me, and how we show up and what we play with changes from week to week. And I don't know what to look, I don't know what to expect except for fun.
That's a really great place to be, right? When you're expecting fun.
Right.
That's,
it comes back to that for me rather to me, I feel like.
Yeah.
Like, this fun's for me, and everyone else is gonna have fun because I'm having fun. That's just how it goes. Like,
and if the journey that we're all on until we die, right, is long and rigorous and a marathon of choosing to,
marathon of choosing.
On a marathon of choosing, truly, then then why not for it to be fun? Why not decide, like, I'm just going to try and lean into the most, like the highest frequency I can find in this given circumstance. And sometimes, most of the time, in my opinion, in my experience, the conditions around me, if I look at my conditions, there's a reason that I could just choose to not believe that this is fun. I could choose that this is heavy, that this is gonna drop me into, there's no hope. This doesn't make any, there's no logical reason why I should be aspiring for something right now. I should be doing that again, back to the should be's, back to the
it's a trap.
It's a trap, because the only other option is, okay, well, these are my limitations, these are my conditions, but I want my life to be fun. I want it to be easy. I want to feel joy. And that comes from having the perspective that you're saying, I'm going to choose jump there from where I am right now. Okay, then what's the next thing that could be a little fun? What sounds like fun right now? And sometimes fun is just laying in bed as soon as you wake up and not moving, right? Like sometimes that's where we're starting from. And if we can just be like, okay, I'm okay with that. That sounds fun. That sounds good to me right now. Like giving into like the body's, what you said, the body wants comfort.
Yep.
Like giving into that. And then once you release that tension of giving into what the body wants for comfort, I have been surprised to have new desires pop up into my mind. Okay, well, if I'm going to lay here in bed all day, I want a cup of tea. Okay, so now I'm out of my bed making a cup of tea. Once I'm on my making a cup of tea, well, it would also be good to like, I should probably eat some breakfast. And now I'm like slowly making these decisions, but it all started from like submitting to that first desire and not resisting it when if you're in a low place, right? Like telling yourself you can't or that you shouldn't be in bed for that long. And granted, this is also something that it's determined by like what are your obligations that day, obviously. But like, you know, if it's a day where you're off and you feel like you should be productive and you should, right? Like then you're just up against your own resistance and tapping into that fun. Well, the first thing that sounds fun to you is laying in bed and you're telling yourself you can't. So of course the day's not going to be fun because it's the first sensation that you're having toward an inkling of fun. So
and you're already squashing it.
Yeah. You're judging yourself and then getting sad and all that.
Yeah. Like give yourself permission to have fun. I think.
Ooh, that's a hot one.
Yeah, it is.
That's a super powerful one. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, there's a lot of trouble associated with fun. You know, like it's fun till someone gets hurt. You know, it's like so. There's always this catch. Okay, I'm gonna get like. There's always like there's some sort of guilt attached with having fun. Like,
oh, this is just levels of like this is okay. I love it where this is going. What were you saying, Brittany? Keep it rolling.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. I think that trepidation does come from some thing we've heard in the past, doing the crazy, doing the woo woo, but like, you know, something we heard in as children that tells us that there's a limit to this. I'm a big proponent and advocate for Julia Cameron books. So like The Artist Way. And if either of you have done The Artist Way, have I?
Write it down though. Write it down though. No, I haven't. Tell more.
That's a workbook. It's a workbook that's 12 weeks long, and you do one chapter a week, and you know, you do some consistent activity throughout. You write in a journal three pages of subconscious writing, just whatever comes to you, even if it's no nonsense, right? But you just fill those 3 pages and you get into the habit of doing that every day. And it's like a place to do the brain drain. So you do your morning pages, and then you do artist dates. So you commit to one activity a week that is just fun. What we're talking about right now, practicing giving into the pleasure that you desire, whether it's like these little stickers that are not they don't add to your productivity in life when it comes to like, you know, the quantitative way of looking at productivity, but they do give you a little bit of pleasure. They give you, they're $1 at the dollar store to get these stickers, but there's something in me that's saying these stickers can be fun, and letting yourself practice that with these small ways. And it doesn't even have to cost you anything. Maybe that thing is, you know, it would be really fun to go to the beach. I never take myself out to the beach, and I live right next to the beach. Let me finally go do that, you know, and making it's setting the intention of having the artist state. And then the rest of the book, each chapter focuses on a subject of confronting the inner artist and like the inner artist child and taking care of that. So a lot of what you've been saying, Peter, about like the inner child inside of us throughout our whole conversation, that's been coming up to my mind. I was like, oh, I wonder if he's done Artist Way, because the inner artist child is like highly referenced in the book. But yeah, I think
I'm glad you brought that up, because I believe, just like the brain is a muscle, our creativity is a muscle, and it needs a workout. It needs, and the more you work it out, the stronger it becomes. And when I was I've transitioned into being, I would say, a full-time content creator, and being a writer at a young age, I was basically at the mercy of the creative flow. Whenever it turned on, I would just start writing, and I would just feel it right, and poetry would pour out of me, right? But it's like I didn't have any control on it, and I didn't know how long it was going to last, and I wrote as long as I possibly could, because I don't know. It'd be like, I don't know when the next opportunity is going to show up, and if I pass this on this opportunity, so it's just like writing became sporadic. Only when I felt the inclination or the inspiration. But in the meantime, I'm sitting there twiddling my thumbs, just waiting for it. Like, come on, writing, come on, like, come on, give me something to write about, And then the book that shifted my experience was Drawing on the Right Side of Your Brain.
I've heard about the book. Yes.
And,
go ahead.
Yeah. And so it gets, it like the Artist Way, there's some exercises and there's practices, but basically it's tapping into the right side of the brain. And one of the exercises was drawing with the left hand, and drawing it from a conceptual, like, hey, I'm going to draw a face, but not how I think a face is supposed to look like, but what the face actually looks like, right? And so as I was drawing, I'm tapping into that right side of the brain, become more conceptualized, become more, instead of, and less analytical, the creative juices started to flow. And then it got to a point where I just kept practicing with my left hand and doing more things with my left hand, wearing my watch on my left hand, brushing my teeth with my left hand. Yeah, it got to a point where, and it was brushing my teeth with the left hand the first time was painful. But it got to a point where I could turn it on and turn it off.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
That's trippy. I'm going to try that.
The creative mind is a muscle. The more you practice it, like you were talking about doing the Saturday exercises with the 2 words, is just brilliant, because it's practice. It gives your mind something to mull over. It gives your creative mind a purpose. It gives you a problem to solve. And the mind is constantly solving problems. And if it doesn't have any, it'll make one up. And so as long as you're providing it problems to solve, it feels purposeful.
I love that.
Will make its own problem. That is, oh, wow.
Super true, though. Think about the ego, that coming back to that talk, where it's the pain, the past pains. I think that's where it ties in right there too, where it's like the past pains that come up, where it's like, oh, you're not going to give me the attention. I'm going to make this the loudest thought in your head forever until you correct me.
Yeah.
Well, like the one point that really gets me is just and I think this is one that, like, we casually, that's one of the reasons why I love this show so much, is that we like casually talk about like super deep, like underneath towards the bottom of the abyss type of like conversation. And like the biggest one that just is so important is we talk about giving space for ourselves and allowing space for you to really look and feel what you really want. But just giving yourself permission to actually have fun and be okay and to enjoy life. Oh, like when do we lose that? You know, like when did that come up? I think one of mine came up was in school. I think it was second grade. I'm not going to throw her under the bus because she did her best with the class she had, but it was like, I remember literally getting told, you're having too much fun, be quiet. And me and my friends were like, for foreign concept, too much fun. You can have too much fun. And I think it's weird. I don't know, like for some reason that whole aspect of giving yourself the permission to simply be you and to dance and to have fun and to sing and to shout, to cry, whatever it is, like we put these roadblocks and like self-limitations on ourselves that we don't allow what naturally needs to express itself and process come out. It's like if we tried to eat all the time and never went to the bathroom. Like that's the way I think about it. Exactly. It's like, but that's the way I see it. I'm just like, we never give ourselves the chance to actually let out what we need. So I found it beautiful what you guys are both talking about in the sense of just give yourself the permission just to lay in bed, because that leads to the next thing. And that's the one first hurdle is everyone resist their resistance. Like one of my biggest teachings is don't resist your resistance. Acknowledge it, accept it, embrace it, understand it. And then usually it just kind of drops away.
Mm-hmm.
I got 2 points on that. One, resistance. Resistance is what keeps airplanes in the air. If you use resistance to your advantage, you can use it.
Right.
You can resist procrastination. Okay. And the other thing about getting permission is that I don't think we were actually, you said, when did we lose it? I don't know if I was actually given it. Like I've always had to seek permission elsewhere. I wasn't actually given permission over my own choices and decisions as a child. Like you talk about accountability.
It's very true. Ooh, I like that.
Well, you made me do some soul searching, right? Some micro soul searching real quick. Like when was I don't know if I ever lost it, because I don't know if I ever possessed it to begin with. It was something I had to go and discover for myself. That wait, I don't need other people's permission to have fun. I can have fun without, because the attitude was, I'll just ask forgiveness later, right? If I don't need permission, rather than asking permission, I'll just ask forgiveness, right? So that was my attitude. But then I realized, wait, I don't need anyone's permission to have fun. That took a long time. That was a midlife crisis lesson.
Yeah. I kind of think of like, when did I start giving myself permission to have fun? I think because my childhood was so, we didn't really get a ton into my childhood, which is fine by me, but also, but it is very informative. Like my childhood was traumatic. Had a lot of, everybody has drama. Everybody has trauma of some kind. But there were some things where I was trying to find a space where I could express myself, right? And I think that there's a line in Chicago, the musical, where it's like, what does she say? She says, "Not enough. None of us got enough love in our childhoods, and that's showbiz, kid." That's the line, and it's the truth in a way.
Yeah.
Not everyone. I know tons of artists who come from beautiful homes that they were really seen and heard. So it's not the essential, ingredient. But I definitely feel like that was where it started for me. I was looking for a place where I could express myself and be animated, because I did have that in me. I was just repressing it at home because it wasn't a safe environment to do that. And it took training and permission from professors and teachers and then directors and then that kind of was the trajectory of me really stepping into, I can give permission to myself. There are other examples too along the journey, but I definitely feel like that was the first time I gave permission to myself, was you have permission from yourself to have fun in this environment. And I think that again kind of mirrors back to something else that was said earlier in our conversation about how musicians are those that are looking for the space for them to have the permission. Like once I'm on stage, now I can really fill up the space. Or once I'm in band practice, now I can really start doing my thing. But otherwise being rather like introverted and pulled away. And I feel like because of my childhood, that's a little bit of my nature. But then because I happened to go, I sought my first permission creatively and animated wise through acting and not through music. It's well, that's kind of confusing because I was writing songs by myself before theater. I would say that music actually is the core of who I am, and acting has been a tool to get me closer to who I am. But anyways, all that being said, just say that like my journey has shown me that the permission to like I'm looking for the space where I can be my full version and it not be out of line, you know. I think that's my first experience with trying to find permission or give myself permission.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I mean,
wow, this is a question.
Yeah, this is some deep introspection.
It's a deep one.
Well, that's my first place where it goes, is just like, because when you guys were talking about it, I was just like, oh, this is heavy. Because like when I'm still entertaining the conversation, but it's just like that question just lingers because I just find myself, I don't know, I feel like it's still finding that expression of it. And it comes back to the permission aspect where it's like, what are we really giving ourselves permission for in this world? And it's I actually have to bring this back because this came up in a session this week, giving away our keys to our kingdom. Like I'm a firm knower of like disturbances that we have in our experiences because we allow them to. So where else are we, like, why are we giving ourselves permission to experience that, to take it that way? And this is where I'm just like, oh man, this is what I love these types of conversations, because every person and every perspective is a piece of the puzzle to answering these kind of greater life mysteries. And that's one of the reasons why these types of forums are always so powerful, especially when people are on that same, like, all right, let's go deep, you know, and you jump in the waters and just like to go down, because I feel like that's where you find the deepest meanings to your own truth. You know, like through this the conversation from what you've said, Brittany, and from what you've said, Rusty, thus far, it's just like, yeah, like I always take each moment as the learning lesson and opportunity it is. And like, I'm already taken away so much that I've just learned from just the things we've talked about. And this is one of the bigger ones for me that I still want to ponder on myself. I feel like I didn't really start giving myself full permission to like have fun until I started to recognize what was fun for me. And that was part of that healing journey of just like, well, what don't I resonate with? And that's where, you know, life tended to throw those lessons where I have to learn the hard way, because I can get kind of stubborn at times. It's just like, well, all right, you think this is what you want? Go all in, you know. And then I come to the end of it and I'm like a hot mess. And I'm like, I didn't like any of that. Like I was wrong. I did not like that. That's not fun.
Yeah, you're laughing now, but not back then.
Oh, exactly. And I think that's the thing is, you know, I always think that we have to transform our suffering into power. And then when we do that, we can just laugh about it. And that also, I found that tends to rub some people the wrong way, because I can go to a very serious, like intense passion to being like, but yeah, it's all good. And then like laugh at something as simple as a fart joke, you know, like I'm a very simple man, but it's just something that like, I don't know. It comes back to that point of, when did we get so serious about life that everything became something we judged? And that's like, that's what really rings true to me. And it's really nothing serious. It's just what we make it.
Yeah.
Another powerful episode of Creatives Chat. And so when we are clear with what it is we want, we can create what is next. So we encourage you to find and connect to your deeper passions, because your dedication will lead you to mastery and being the best version of yourself. So keep on keeping on. Subscribe to be notified of future episodes. And have a happy always.
Roll the outro.
That concludes this episode of Creatives Chat. Thank you for watching. Join us every Thursday at 3:33 p.m. Pacific Daily Time as creative minds get together and chat about who knows what. View more episodes on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks again to our sponsors for making this show possible. Thank you, We Are Historically, for your conscious human apparel. Shop online at wearehistorically.com.
Hi, I'm Darius Wilrich. I'll teach you everything you need to know about playing jazz piano like a pro with my 12-week online video course and downloadable guidebook, Jazz Piano Pro Essentials. Enroll today at jazzpianopro.com.
Thanks for joining us.